Good afternoon and hello, everyone. My name is Rich Longo, Flycast Partners. I'd like to thank you for joining us for another Flycast Partners presentation. Today's presentation is on the Cherwell Enterprise Overview of HR. So if you have Cherwell or you're looking at Cherwell, this is definitely a webcast that you'll be interested in. Our presenter today is Kyle Hamilton, one of our senior SEs. And Kyle has been in the industry nearly 30 years now and been involved in everything from IT service management, IT asset management, IT operations management, everything from discovery tools to enterprise service management, ITIL. He's got multiple certifications and trainings, and he has been instrumental in guiding our customers and prospects in the right direction and helping them evaluate their current environment and helping them create more efficiencies for their organization. Before we get started, let me introduce Flycast Partners. Flycast Partners offers best-in-class implementation services and training in IT service management, IT asset management, IT operations management, IT security, enterprise service management, and workload automation spaces using ITIL best practice. Our professional services team has well over 5,700 professional services engagements, both on-site and remote. And as a company, Flycast Partners has nearly 1,300 regular customers throughout Canada and the United States. I encourage you to reach out to us at 844 Flycast. That's 844-359-2278. Or you can email us at info@flycastpartners.com. Better yet, I encourage you to also go to our website and chat live with one of our IT experts. They're standing by for you, waiting just to talk to you about anything in IT. They'll help you with data sheets, white papers, training materials, remote administration services, support that can get you trial downloads, whatever it is you're looking for. Without further delay, I'll go ahead and turn this over to Kyle. Kyle, I've passed over control of everything to you. And folks, if you have questions during today's presentation, go ahead and type those in the questions section of this GoToWebinar, and Kyle will go ahead and answer those questions for us. So Kyle, it's all on you, sir.
Okay, thank you, Rich. And good afternoon, everybody. Appreciate y'all taking time out of your day. So hopefully you'll find some value out of today's presentation. As Rich mentioned, I'll be going over the Cherwell HR Service Management. We'll call it a module, we'll say content. Because really what we're talking about today is content that's available through what's called the Cherwell Service Management Enterprise. And that includes not only this HR component we're going through today, but we're also going to be following up, going through the remainder of the enterprise content, which relates to facilities and security management, so that you get a good overall feel for what's available through that enterprise license. So today we're going to focus on the HR service management component to start. I'm going to jump this into full screen. And we're going to talk about, kind of walk through the content that's delivered in these modules for those of y'all again that have used Cherwell and familiar with it, or even more so those that administrate it. You'll be able to see as we go through here the vast amount of content that's delivered through these applicable modules. And the first part we're going to look at is going to be from a end user perspective or self-service perspective, in this case, a pre-hire. So what they're doing with the Cherwell portal here, this new hire portal, is providing a portal for users before day one. So this is designed so that the minute they start the onboarding process, the very first step is going to be to give them, an email with their user ID, and we'll talk about that a little bit in a moment. And that's going to grant them access to this onboarding portal. So this will be their first way to interact as you start to onboard those users, so that when they click that link that they receive and begin to click the onboarding process, they're going to be presented with a list of tasks. And we'll talk about these in a moment as well. So this is designed so that, and it does several things. Number one, it better engagement with that new hire versus email, or even having to do it over the phone, which you can't do in many cases because you're referring to forms and fields and et cetera. But also for those customers that are looking to drive self-service adoption in general, this is a great way to get the new hires in the company accustomed to the Cherwell portal before they actually start using the Cherwell portal. That way they're already accustomed to accessing Cherwell for all the pre-hire tasks that they have to do. So it'll be much easier than post day one to have them return to that Cherwell portal to continue using it for day-to-day incidents and service requests related to HR, IT, or facilities or otherwise. So it serves several different benefits or several different purposes and provides multiple benefits. Now, the next piece I want to talk about is around HR case management. So part of the content is delivered as a completely new record type called an HR case, which will be separate from day-to-day incidents, problems, and changes. Right? So they'll be broken out separately, and you see the HRSM. And by the way, that's if y'all have ever seen the SHRM commercials on television, I know I have. It's the Society for Human Resource Management, I believe. All of the content that's delivered in here and all of the workflow and the process that we'll talk about comes directly from best practices delivered from SHRM. So this is not something that Cherwell did in a vacuum. They went to the experts in the space when designing and laying out the forms, as well as the workflow and the process behind it. So there's not only a lot of content, but a lot of thought put behind this as well. Now, in this particular case, let me pull up an existing case. Let's abandon this guy. And let's take boarding request here. Now, a lot of the content that's delivered, you'll see as you go through and start creating cases within this HR SM content module, in the form of things like the categories. Again, this is all coming from best practices in terms of what those categories should be. So is it a case related to employee benefits, for example, and you'll notice it blanks some other fields out because there's dependencies in those subcategories and services, et cetera. So if I select benefits, and of course, it's going to provide me with the list of benefit subcategories of dental benefits, is it related to leave of absence, et cetera. And on, again, with the case service, is it related to they simply asking a question related to their dental benefits, or are they reporting an issue that they're having with their dental benefits? That also drives, or this case service is also going to drive, let's say we're going to report an issue, the assignment of that particular case. So again, some of the content that's delivered is automatically creates the teams and the security groups and everything on the back end, so that there are out of the box assignment rules based on that service that's actually being reported and where that customer is located. So if you select different services, it may go to a tier 2 team, it may go to tier 1 in EMEA or APAC. All of that workflow is built in so that not only do you have these dependent lists to be able to filter the content out for the fields, but it's also driving automated notifications and automated assignments on the back end. I'm going to abandon these changes, and we'll pull this back up. Now, if I'm ready to, once I've created and save this initial case, a couple things to mention. And I did this in advance just so you don't have to wait for me to go through and fill out all of these fields. Is when I select that category of employee onboarding in this case, one thing that's going to happen is I'm going to get a secondary tab that's going to pop up called the specifics tab. So these are all the fields that are now needed specific to the onboard process. And you can see it's things like, are they exempt employee, are they full-time, part-time, of course, details like contact information, job titles, etc. And I need that in order to start doing all the automated pieces, automated steps. Now, I can see over here on the right-hand side, they've also created some quick one-step actions that you can execute. So if I want to update that customer at any point in time, I've got a pretty formatted email and kick out saying, here's the current status and here's what we've done and here's where we are in the process. I can also see right above here is a little start onboarding action. So once I've completed all of the required fields and filled in all the specifics, I can then kick off the onboard process. In this case, for Morgan, and you'll see it goes through and it starts kicking off some automated cases. Right, so from the back, I can see here that we've got a new incident that's created to create a new AD account for Sarah, who's the new hire. So you can have that automation already built in to Cherwell without having to build all of those automated steps yourself. There's a lot of components on the back end, not only driving the questions, but also driving things like automated tasking and incidents, also drives things like additional checklists. Now, I can also do this back on this homepage. You'll notice there's a quick action here for add a checklist. So out of the box with this content, they provided all the paperwork that you would typically go through for an onboard process, and they've created checklists for those items. So if we're doing onboarding, offboarding, which is already added in this case, but let's say I wanted to add a new 90-day benefits checklist. You'll notice here on this tab, I've got two checklists here now, one for the new hire, which got added automatically when I went and selected the onboard process. And you can see in each checklist that it's got really two options, either done or skipped over, and an optional place to put comments. So as you go through and you complete these activities, you have a time and date stamp of when they were completed or when they were skipped, et cetera, as you're going through and actually fulfilling all these onboard tasks. Now there's also that separate checklist that I just added for the 30-day benefits, allow me to do the same thing, so that a lot of those checklists or all of the checklists should be there automatically based on the category and subcategory and the service that's defined in that HR case. But you always have the opportunity or ability, I should say, to be able to add manual checklists to an HR case if needed. Now, there's also the ability to automatically kick over a ticket to IT. And if something else needs to be done out of the normal scope of the onboard process that's already laid out. You can also create tasks. These relate directly back to the onboard process that new hire gets when they log into that new hire screen. This is going to be, that list of tasks that I create here is what's going to be sitting on that task list when they log into that new hire portal day one, or pre-day one, I should say. Now, in addition to being able to drive, automation within the checklists and within the forms themselves, One really great thing is the ability to handle cases in batch. And this can become, I probably just cancel that. This can become incredibly handy when you are attempting to go in and set up, numerous onboard, numerous new hires, which is quite common, especially now. People are hiring like crazy, and you want to be able to process those quickly. Let me search up a list here. Let's see. So I want to go in and I want to be able to, number one, create, in this case, I want to send out some W-4 forms. Maybe we've got multiple new hires, and that W-4 is one of those items on the checklist that I've need to mark as complete. So I need to send out a bunch of W-4s to a bunch of individuals. I can fill out what needs to be done here, and I will mention a couple things here while we're on this. You'll see repetitively throughout all of the HR forms this country code. That country code is an important field in that actually drives a lot of the content that's made available as well. Meaning, and we'll see this also if you look at the knowledge, HR knowledge works in the same fashion. I may have certain, onboarding forms that are used in North America that have no applicability in Europe or the UK or Asia Pacific. Completely different set of forms, completely different set of information that's needed. So this country code drives the content that's available, so that if I'm an employee working out of EMEA, I'm getting EMEA forms and I'm answering EMEA questions and I'm seeing EMEA knowledge versus seeing everything built out for North America that has no applicability. So everywhere throughout the HR module, regardless of what you're creating, this country code becomes important, because that's going to determine then what the process is and what documentation and what that checklist looks like, depending upon which country you're dealing with, which locale. Now, once I've defined what I want to do, then all I have to do is link those users, those new employees, to this batch case. So I've just simply selected, 6 of the new hires that we've got out there. And at this point, once I'm ready to kick it off, all I have to do is say create cases. You'll see that that'll actually run through. You see it's going 15, 16, 17. I think we maxed out there. So it quickly just generated 6 new cases right there, all for different individuals, all to send out the W-4 form, with perhaps, their specifics already, populated into the form. So you can see each one, has this one's for Francis, and then get the next one for Murphy, and on and on. So that's an incredibly powerful way to be able to automate the onboarding or offboarding. Keep in mind that same process and work in advance, again, all based on that category, so that offboarding has the same kind of workflow associated with it that we see with onboarding. And you'll see the minute I select that onboarding process, notice it went to that T1 North America team. That's where it's using that location to determine where to automatically assign this ticket. Otherwise, it may be going to Tier 1 in EMEA or Tier 1 in APAC or some other group or team. So there was an incredible amount of not only the forms themselves, but within the quick actions, and of course the self-service portal interface, which, like the other Cherwell portals, can be infinitely configured if you're familiar with that at all. What I want to show you now is the other component, which is HR specific knowledge. So again, they've broken out a completely different knowledge base from IT so that you can have unique, options driven by on those same best practices from SHRM. So you're going to see a lot of the same categories here at this level. So if I'm creating an article about employee benefits, then you'll see some automation happening because the minute I assign this category, you'll see that they've got a process defined for knowledge creation. It's going to go through technical review and formatting review, and it has to be published and approved and published. And so as you're going through and assigning those categories, and if you look down, it'll automatically update that assigned team and define who's going to have to review both technically and who's going to be doing a formatting review. Now the subcategory, we'll just say in this case, disability. Now this is where I can, selectively determine, as an HR user, HR role, is this something I want visible on the customer portal? Do I want users to be able to query this up? Do I want to make it part of the FAQ section? Some call special attention to it. Of course, being able to add any keywords into it. And if you look just over here to the right, this is another very important section, and the reason they broke this out into a HR knowledge article is because it allows you to easily filter out knowledge based on several what they call personas, or really just set of attributes. So one is the article available to both exempt or non-exempt employees? Who gets to see it? Is it for full-time? And it may not be a matter of should we expose it to them? It may just be a matter of does it apply to them? Is it something that is just going to confuse them? That way, if it's something that's only related to full-time employees, then it's not a knowledge article we want popping up in somebody's face if they're not a full-time status. You can have things flagged for managers or users that are flagged in the manager role. So you can have articles that are just designated to go out to every manager within the organization, or be available to every manager within the organization. And then again here, just important, this is where, is this benefit guideline article that I'm creating, does it pertain to those that are working in Albania? Does it pertain to those working in Armenia? Because the country codes that I add are going to be those users that are going to see that article when they actually go and perform a query and ask about disability claims. We only want to show it to the countries that this article is applicable to. And taking it a step further, of course, if you're in the States, it might be different from Texas to Florida, for example. So I'd come in and simply apply it not only at a country level, but say this is only applicable in Florida and Texas. So that way you can easily segment articles beyond the simple kind of roles and security groups, because a lot of your HR content is going to be state specific, especially country specific. So that way, whether you're managing within a small city, or whether you've got employees scattered out worldwide, you can manage it all in one place and make sure that the content that's applicable to the right group of users is exposed just to that group of users. and then be able to create articles and have a defined process. Whoop, did I miss something? Yeah, it's gonna, oh, what was it saying? Oh, there it is. Here is what you need. Now, as it goes through the submission process, it's got that best practice workflow already set up on the back end. So it immediately goes in for a technical review. And you'll see that's going to be, based on the category selected for the article, which team that's going to be that performs that technical review. So when I kick that off, right, it's going to automatically send out a notification to that team that they need to perform a review and come in and update the status, and of course probably enter in details in the journal. Then you get to format review, and then you'll see when I get to the format review, it's automatically going to go to a pending approval state. So you'll see here on the approval tab, go out. In this case, it went out to the admin, but you can have that, of course, defined for. You have those that are, there's actually HR knowledge management roles defined out of the box. Being part of that content that's in that package, so that those users get notified and can approve or reject that article before actually publishing it. And you can manually add approvals if needed. You can also define, of course, in advance who the publishing approver is going to be. So when you get through all the technical reviews and all the intermediate approvals, who's going to be the final word on being able to publish this article so that it's actually available for search and retrieval. And you'll notice that if we go back to the initial starting page here, that there is also a set or library of dashboards specific to the HR cases and the HR knowledge we were talking about. So you've got different roles that I mentioned, and you'll see these right here. So everything from HR executives to the HR knowledge manager, which is just talking about, and HR managers, and then those tiers, tier 1, tier 2. And again, that then gets broken down into tier 1, tier 2 North America, and APAC, and EMEA, so that each time someone logs in with a specific role, of course, they can have their own defaulted dashboards. You saw the executives, and then you've got your tier 1 and tier 2, your service managers, each one providing a different viewpoint into those cases, whether they're looking at them from a team management perspective, or an individual contributor, or an executive who's more focused on just the high level stats and the key performance indicators. So there's a lot of content that's delivered within the HR service management module. So much that I was trying to think earlier today, if somebody had to recreate this, which I'll wide openly say that this is nothing that you couldn't, given enough time and effort, sit down and crank out yourself. But I would probably estimate that in probably about 6 months or so, at least, of full-time dedicated effort, to be able to replicate all the forms, all the workflow and approvals, and all the related, the validated pick lists and things like that for category and subcategory. There's a tremendous amount of value, and the fact that it's built around the best practices keeps you from having to play guesswork. And it's hopefully something that even if you don't go down this path, you could easily see, and we'll hopefully see in the upcoming weeks as we talk about the same kind of thing for facilities cases and facilities management and in security, where you're dealing with threat analysis and risk detection and things like that. How that Cherwell can be expanded beyond its initial IT-based purpose, which they all kind of tend to have that bent out of the box. And that's why they're starting to deliver content like this enterprise content, is to be able, because this would be hard for an individual organization to pull off in any reasonable amount of time. And so this makes it kind of almost plug and play. There's still work to get in there to massage it and put in some specifics for your environment. But it's pretty much out of the box, gives you a way to immediately bring HR in this case into the Cherwell environment, and have them have a better experience using Cherwell than what they're using today. Gets everybody on a common platform, and then you can expand that on and on, whether it's those that I've mentioned or legal departments and document management and other uses you can think of, just to show you some ideas of how Cherwell can be bent for other processes outside of just IT. But that's it for me, unless Rich, do we have any questions from anybody?
We have quite a few questions. They've been piling up here. Let's see. The first one comes from Kanai. What kind of training is needed to start with the Cherwell Service Management? Which is not quite related to what you went over, but you may be able to answer that.
Sure. I really like most of the tools in this space. There's typically, for you to become somewhat proficient, there's a week-long kind of a basic admin class that covers everything, and that's basically 40 weeks, right? So 8 hours a day, probably remote as of now, possibly in person, but that way it introduces you to everything from setting it up and configuring it initially to rolling out new portals and configuring things like the quick actions and the dashboard. So I would say roughly about 40 hours to become proficient, or at least let's say to know your way around and to know how to do things. It's typically about 3 months of pretty good usage before you start to really feel comfortable, to where you no longer have to think about it. But that's no different, than any other tool that offers this kind of flexibility.
All right, next question. How can I create personalized dashboards rather than having a default dashboard for all users? That comes from Sherry.
That's done in the roles. So the roles, when you set up a role, you have the option to define a dashboard, whether they use the default for that role or whether you define a specific dashboard for them to see. And then you'd set each one. So you'll see I have my HR executives, they get the HR executive dashboard. And if I log in as a knowledge manager, they get knowledge management. But unless you set it here specifically, it's going to come in that default setting. So everybody's going to see the same one unless you change it here.
Are these features like keeping track of arbitrary time to gather data on how long certain tasks, resources took to understand the pain?
Yeah, absolutely. And you can, just like with your typical incidents and requests, you of course have service levels that can be associated with those onboard requests, so that if you want to track, just the overall, just using onboarding as an example, if you just wanted to track the overall time it took to get that user onboarded from start to finish, or by breaking it down, that onboard process, and this is one of the reasons why it's done, by breaking that onboard process down into a series of tasks, like that task to create that AD user, Then you have the ability to go in and see, well, how long did it take them to close their AD ticket? And then how long did it take facilities to get the cubicle set up? And then how long did it take to get the telephone line dropped and connected? So by breaking it down into tasks, as opposed to having one request or one ticket that gets forwarded around, that gives you the flexibility to then break it down into those smaller blocks where you can put SLAs and track each individual task as well as the overall SLA. So you may have 2 weeks to onboard an employee, but you may have 7 tasks to accomplish within there, and they may have 2 days each, right, to accomplish their tasks. So that way you can see if you're not meeting your SLA for the 2-week onboard, you'll be able to go back and figure out who or why or where the process is breaking down, if it's in facilities or what have you, and be able to address it that way.
And that is all the questions we have right now. If you have any questions, folks, now's the time to type them in. Thank you so much, Kyle. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to do this for us.
Absolutely.
And folks, if you do, go ahead, Kyle.
Well, I said happy to do it.
All right, folks, if you have any questions, by all means, go ahead and call us at 844-FLYCAST. That's 844-359-2278. You can also email us at info@flycastpartners.com, or you can simply reach out to us via our website and chat with us live during normal business hours. They're standing by, IT experts. They're more than happy to answer any questions or get you anything you're looking for. With that being said, I'm going to wish everyone a great rest of your week and enjoy what's left of the next couple of days right before the weekend. And until our next broadcast, have a safe one, folks.